Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see you here today. I think we still have some people arriving as it's just 1 o'clock Eastern. It's a few other times depending on where you're dialing in from, but we're going to start right away, right on time. And so I'm going to turn it over to Victor Beausoleil, who is our board president, to welcome you in and to start us in a good way.
Hey, greetings, folks. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Victor Beausoleil. I'm the Executive Director of Social Economy through Social Inclusion, CCEDNet, and the proud president of the Canadian CCEDNet Network's Board of Directors. It is my pleasure to be hosting CCEDNet's 22nd Annual General Meeting today. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the ancestors that came before us, for each of us as individuals, but also the many ancestors who have lived on this land since time immemorial. As well as acknowledging the land itself from which all life springs. I'd like to welcome you all you CCEDNet members, especially if this is your first CCEDNet AGM. I'd also like to welcome some youth participants of CCEDNet's Create Action program. We actually met a remarkable colleague this morning from the program that's provided some incredible music for us this morning, so I'm excited to see that our youth participants are here today. I'd also like to welcome and thank all the CCEDNet staff who are joining us in attendance today as well. Are we on the second slide? Because if we are, I want to give folks a little orientation to Zoom. We're doing things a little bit differently this year. Bilingual French, English AGMs now for a few years, but this is our first year using Zoom. So let's review a few key features to make sure everyone has the best experience possible. First, this AGM is being presented simultaneously in English and French. You can access interpretation by clicking the globe icon on the lower navigation bar of your Zoom window and then selecting either the English or French channel. Once you do, we recommend clicking Mute Original Audio. So that's Mute Original Audio to help eliminate distractions. If you don't turn interpretation on, you remain in the main channel where speakers will be speaking and presenting in both English and French. You can also access a live transcript of this meeting by clicking the live transcript CC icon and selecting Show Subtitles. You can click and drag the transcript subtitles to whatever position is comfortable for you, or turn them off if they're distracting. We can go to slide number 3, thank you. We invite you to change your change the display name to include your first and last name and the name of your organization, as well as your pronouns, if you're comfortable doing so. To rename yourself, you can hover your mouse over your video feed in the Zoom window. Click the 3 horizontal dots that appear in the top right corner of your feed, and then click Rename. Alternatively, you can hover over your name in the participants panel, click More, and then click Rename as well. Also, if you'd like to change the skin tone of your reaction emoji, navigate to Zoom preferences under general settings. This is one I need to do myself. You'll see an option to select your preferred skin tone. We can go on to slide number 4. So how will we be handling AGM motions? Well, when a motion comes up, we'll first ask for a mover and a seconder from among the members in attendance. To move or second, you can click on the reaction smiley face icon on the lower navigation bar and then click raise hand. If you don't see that option, you can use the applause emoji as an alternative. Let's practice that now. So go ahead, please, and raise your hand, your virtual hands that is, or clap them together. I'll wait a few seconds while folks practice that. Okay, awesome, good. It looks like many people can raise their hands, so I shouldn't have any trouble getting movers and seconders for resolutions. Once the motion is seconded, we will launch a poll asking for your votes. You can then click yes, no, or abstain to submit your votes. Please only vote if you are a member. So once again, please only vote if you are a member. So let's try that out. We're gonna launch a test poll right now, and please vote in it. Excellent. So it seems the voting seems to be working. If any of this was challenging or didn't work, Don't worry, we have staff providing real-time tech support throughout the meeting. So thank you, Ben, Matthew, and the incredible team at CCEDNet for providing that tech support. If any of you need help, send a chat message to Ben. He's under tech support as his name, and he'll help you out. So right now, we're gonna call the AGM to order. So this year, the formal AGM is 1 hour, which will be followed by a special ceremony to present the Stronger Together Awards. So at this time, I'd like to hereby call the meeting to order. Our parliamentarian for the AGM today, in case there are any procedural questions, is Yvonne Poirier. Thank you so much, Yvonne, as always, for your eldership, your leadership, and your brilliance. So item number 2 is verification of quorum. Now, for the verification of quorum, our colleague Melissa Lessard is our credentials officer. Our bylaws require 25 members for quorum. Melissa, with the members in attendance, do we have quorum?
Yes, we do. Oui, nous l'avons.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. We appreciate you, Melissa, for your leadership and diligence as always. All right, we have a good group of people together and we want to give you a chance to say hello. So we're going to ask everyone to unmute, and when I count to 3, everyone can say hello or bonjour. So on 3, 1, 2, 3.
Hello.
Bonjour, everyone.
Bonjour.
안녕하세요.
Merci pas, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. We appreciate your leadership. So item number 3, the adoption of the agenda. The next item is the adoption of the agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder from among the members to adopt the agenda you have before you? Please raise your hand or once again, use the clap emoji.
I so move.
Thank you so much. And could you say your name, please?
Danielle Brunette from CMC.
Daniel, thank you so much. I'm navigating a few screens, so I can't see you. Wonderful, thank you. And a seconder?
I can second. My name is Aftab Khan from AHC Alberta.
Thank you so much, Aftab. Are there any questions or comments? If there's any questions or comments, you can post them in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Now for the votes, members, please vote. So the next item is the adoption of the minutes from June 11, 2020. Adoption of last year's AGM meeting, AGM minutes. Can I have 2 members move and second the adoption of the minutes? Please raise your hand, clap, or unmute.
Victor, in case you might not be seeing the screens
Okay.
for people, yeah, there was Diana Jedig and Victoria Morris who have raised their hands.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mike. You're correct. I can only see the presentation. Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you. Now for the votes. Please vote in the poll on your screen. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're moving on to slide number 6, which is our annual review. And I'm going to hand this off to our executive director, Michael Toy, to make a brief presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victor. And thanks everyone for, as Victor said, this is our first year doing this on Zoom. So it's not quite as smooth as it may be in the past, but things are going pretty good. So I'll try. This is where I do a grave injustice to the awesome work of the staff team over the last year by trying to sum up highlights in 10 minutes or so. And I'm going to start, however, in French. So as we explained at the beginning, if you don't understand French, you want to switch to the English interpretation channel at the bottom of the screen. Donc, bonjour, merci d'être là et en si grand nombre. Il va sans dire que 2020 a été une année pleine de défis pour le réseau, comme pour nous tous, mais c'était aussi une année d'évolution, de progrès et d'avancées importantes qui me fait plaisir de partager avec vous. La fondation de notre travail repose sur une théorie du changement que nous avons commencé à élaborer en 2019 et poursuivi en 2020. Les 4 résultats à moyen terme qui ont été présentés lors de l'Assemblée générale annuelle l'année passée demeurent, tout comme notre mission et notre vision, mais nous avons précisé l'énoncé du problème, ajouté du texte sur comment le changement se passe et identifier nos valeurs et les rôles qu'on joue. Puisque le diapositive, l'infographie ici que vous voyez est un peu trop petit pour lire, je vais vous rappeler les 4 résultats à moyen terme. En premier, c'est une augmentation de la demande publique et l'action politique pour le développement économique communautaire. Deuxième, c'est la co-création des stratégies de développement économique communautaire qui visent la libération collective par la justice économique en plaçant les personnes et les communautés qui sont les experts de leurs propres expériences au centre des démarches. Troisième, c'est que les approches et les stratégies de développement économique communautaire s'attaquent aux crises écologiques et climatiques tout en renforçant l'équité. Et enfin, que les membres du réseau, vous avez accès à l'information, à l'apprentissage, aux relations et aux ressources nécessaires pour votre succès. Alors, les infographies que vous voyez ont été présentées aux membres il y a 2 semaines et nous avons eu de bonnes discussions et des commentaires. En ce moment, nous sommes à raffiner les stratégies et les indicateurs, mais beaucoup de travail a été fait et je tiens à remercier le groupe de travail qui ont mis beaucoup de temps dans la dernière année, dont Michelle Calusi, Barb Davies, Katie Damon, Nicole Rosenow-Redhead et Victor Beausoleil du conseil d'administration et Raisa Marks, Alex Applin, Hannah Atkinson-Ringlich and Adriana Zielinski on the staff team. Dans le cadre de cette série de changements, nous avons établi les 6 axes stratégiques que vous voyez ici: le renforcement des capacités, le développement d'écosystèmes, la recherche et l'innovation, les communications, l'engagement des membres et les politiques publiques. Je vais parler brièvement de chacun, mais vous pouvez voir une présentation plus détaillée de nos réalisations en 2020 en cliquant sur le lien fourni parmi les documents pour la réunion d'aujourd'hui. Nos programmes de renforcement des capacités représentent le plus grand champ d'action parmi les 6 stratégies. Si on peut juste avancer la diapositive. Nous étions, merci beaucoup, très heureux de relancer le programme Création en 2020 en partenariat avec l'Association nationale des centres d'amitié et la Société de recherche sociale appliquée. Sur 3 ans, ce programme va placer 100 jeunes qui font face à des obstacles à l'emploi dans des stages rémunérés auprès d'organisations à impact social et dans des centres d'amitié à l'échelle du Canada. Puisque vous êtes membre du réseau, vous connaissez, j'espère, les programmes de renforcement des capacités organisationnelles comme Spark, le projet d'écosystème de l'entreprise sociale S4ES et le programme de leadership communautaire. Mais le renforcement des capacités se fait aussi à l'interne parmi le personnel et le conseil d'administration, ainsi qu'avec les autres acteurs du domaine de l'innovation sociale. En s'appuyant sur un engagement envers l'intersectionnalité, dans notre nouvelle théorie du changement, nous avons poursuivi des apprentissages sur l'antiracisme, l'anti-oppression et la libération collective. Et nous avons bénéficié du leadership de CCEDNet, Social Economy through Social Inclusion, qui coordonne un groupe de travail solidaire pour les acteurs des domaines de l'innovation sociale et de la finance sociale, engagés à éradiquer le racisme, la colonisation et l'exclusion. Le développement d'écosystèmes, le 2e axe d'intervention, est une stratégie depuis longtemps pour le réseau. Auparavant, nous l'avons appelé le développement des réseaux régionaux, mais la motivation demeure la même, c'est parce que nous trouvons que c'est à l'échelle provinciale ou régionale que l'engagement des membres et des partenariats, la mobilisation autour d'enjeux politiques et le développement de programmes de soutien sont les plus efficaces. Par contre, cette année, avec un soutien du programme de préparation à l'investissement du gouvernement fédéral, nous avons vu un progrès très intéressant dans plusieurs provinces, entre autres avec des partenaires que vous voyez ici. Au Manitoba, nous avons procédé à une réorganisation suite au non-renouvellement du financement provincial, mais l'équipe très dévouée en place poursuit les activités et Manitoba demeure notre modèle inspirant de réseau provincial. Maintenant, je vais continuer en anglais. Research and innovation has emerged as an important element of our work to advance the field, from research projects like our work integration social enterprise longitudinal study to the groundbreaking community-led impact measurement work being done by the Common Approach, to the community data program, which puts local data in the hands of communities. We're building the tools and the evidence that strengthens the case for the work all of you do every day. Communications and information sharing has always been a central function of CCEDNet. Although over the 22 years of the network's existence, obviously the information environment in which we operate has changed completely. We continue to publish news, events, tools, and jobs on our website and share those in newsletters and social media. But you'll see in 2020 a change in our style in communications with more narrative, as well as a change in the nature of our communications with explicit statements of solidarity with Indigenous peoples and Canadians of African descent, information about the actions we're taking to make that solidarity real, and invitations to our readers to learn more and take action as well. These are important steps toward making manifest the values and principles articulated in our theory of change. Those communication changes also involve the creation of a quarterly member communique in 2020, the creation of English and French Google groups for members to draw on our collective knowledge, the Stronger Together Award nomination process that we're presenting the results of today, and in fact, this full day of activities around the AGM. There wasn't an ACONAS, I should know how to pronounce that since I was kind of involved in creating that name, but I say ACONAS, there wasn't one of those planned in 2020 because we had intended to partner with the Social Enterprise World Forum in Halifax, which ended up being postponed to this fall. But our Manitoba team was able to move the annual Manitoba Gathering online, going a long way, in fact, to replicating the family reunion feel for the 300 people who attended. Our national policy work had a landmark year last year, all because 5 members agreed to match an investment by CCEDNet that allowed us to hire a staff person dedicated to national policy work for the first time. I'd like to thank, in particular, John Buck at CDEC, Roz Lockyer at Perro, Jeff Loomis at Momentum, Len Usiskin at Quint, and Karina Rosales at Seed Winnipeg for making that possible. And this work has really dramatically improved our national policy positioning with government officials and among sector partners, which in my view has never been stronger. Public policy research is, of course, a common priority for the regional ecosystems we're supporting across the country. And here again, Manitoba's processes and initiatives remain a model. So that is my very quick coverage of a full year. And I can hear you saying, Mike, how many hundred people does CCEDNet have doing all this? And if we can go back one slide so you can enjoy the pictures of our marvelous staff team. It's all possible thanks to a small and very talented and dedicated staff team who are spread out over 3 provinces and 5 offices. The board and all of you, our members, lead the work and direct it, but it's the staff who make it all happen. And through this very difficult year, they did an exceptional job. So I would ask you to please thank me or help me in thanking them for the excellent work this year. So that's it, I think, for the annual review. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Mike, as always, for your leadership. I really appreciate all your work and your tireless efforts to move community economic development forward across Canada. If there's any questions for Mike, you can post them in the chat box or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. So we're going to move on to the 17th slide, which is our financial reports. And I'm going to introduce our incredible colleague, Gail Henderson, the Associate Professor of Law at Queen's University and CCEDNet Treasurer, to present the results of 2020 audit.
Thank you, Victor. So we can go to the next slide. So this year again, our auditors were Group RDL, located in Victoriaville, Quebec. As part of the audit process, the Finance Committee met with the auditors prior to beginning the audit to review the process and provide some specific direction. We met again at the conclusion of the audit to hear the findings. And I would like to thank the members of CCEDNet's Finance Committee for their time and valuable contribution over the last year. Victoria Morris, Roz Lockyer, former Treasurer Diana Jeddick, and Yvonne Poirier. The financial statements were provided with the AGM materials, and I think Hannah put a link in the chat earlier during Mike's presentation, if you want to be able to look at those, because I'm going to go through the presentation fairly quickly, just highlighting the main elements of the audited financial statements from the statement of operations and the balance sheet. And I'll go quickly through the presentation so that we have time for questions and comments afterwards, if there are any. So the first 3 pages of that document are the auditor's report. This is a standard letter similar to what we've received in the past, following the Canadian accounting standards for nonprofit organizations. And the auditors gave their opinion that based on their testing, the financial statements fairly present CCEDNet's financial position. So this slide presents the revenue side of the statement of operations found on page 4 of the audited financial statements. In 2020, we had a small increase in revenue from the beginning of some new projects, such as the Création program. This offset a reduction in revenues for other programs, such as those in Manitoba. The reductions in Manitoba were the result of the non-renewal of provincial government funding there. The CCEDNet board authorized a drawdown of Manitoba reserves to facilitate the reorganization of our Manitoba operations, of which a small portion was used in 2020, and we may use a bit more in 2021. So this chart compares the sources of revenue in 2019 and 2020. Event income is, of course, much reduced for some obvious reasons. The growth in government contributions is related to the Création program, as well as our work through the Investment Readiness program. And contracted services also grew through the Community Data program. So this slide presents the main expense categories from the statement of operations. Detailed breakdowns of each of these categories can be found in schedules A to D, which are on the last page of the audited financial statements. So moving on to our balance sheet, which appears on page 6 of the audited financial statement. This slide shows the assets, revealing a stronger cash position at year end and higher accounts receivable. The liability side of the balance sheet shows that the accounts payable and the deferred income are both higher as well. So coming to our net assets, we see that our restricted assets have increased to over 500,000. We also received a bequest of nearly 85,000 from the estate of Stuart Perry for a youth fund that is currently under development. The growth of net assets prompted the Finance Committee to propose an update to our reserve policy, which was adopted by the board, restructuring our reserves into a contingency reserve and a strategic initiatives reserve. And this is presented in note 3 of the financial statements, in case you can't read the tiny print on the slide. This coming year, the Finance Committee will be working on an endowment policy and an investment policy for CCEDNet. So this chart shows the evolution of CCEDNet's income, expenses, and net assets over the existence of the organization. And this year showed us with slight growth in revenues over expenses. So this chart shows the evolution of financial results for the last 13 years. And our financial situation has shown positive progress continuing since 2016. So finally, one more chart is a chart of the growth of our non-capital net assets since 2003. So that takes care of our financial presentation, and I know I moved through that quickly, so we will now invite questions or clarifications, and I'll provide those to the extent that I can.
Thank you so much, Gail, for your leadership. If there's any questions for Gail, you can post them in the chat box or raise your hand if you'd like to speak. Okay, wonderful. So we now need a resolution to appoint the auditor for 2020. We have been working with Group RDL for a number of years, including following a competitive tendering process for bids in 2018. So we're looking for a motion to continue with them for 2021. Gail, will you make that motion?
Yes, thanks, Victor. I move to reappoint Group RDL as auditor for 2021.
Thank you so much, Gail. Can I get a member to second that motion?
Wendy Keats, I'll second that motion.
Nice to see you, Wendy. Thank you so much, Wendy. We appreciate you. Now for the votes. Please, members, vote on the poll on your screen. We're just waiting a moment to make sure that the motion has been carried or defeated.
I think we can ask the tech support to close the poll and see the results. Yeah, there we go.
Wonderful. The motion carries. Thank you so much, Ben and tech support, for your leadership. So we're going to move on to the next slide, the bylaw and amendments. This year, we have a minor bylaw amendment to ratify. Last October, the board adopted a change to Article 6.2 of the bylaws, simply removing reference to the past presidents. This was done as part of a broader update last fall to policies governing the board and reflected a practice stopped in 2014. So before I see if there are any questions, I need a mover and a seconder from among the members to please raise your hand or to take yourself off mute, and motion and second.
I propose Louis Grenier.
Thank you so much. And a seconder?
I can second that. Ryan Knight.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Good to see you, brother. Now, if there's any questions or comments, you can post them in the chat box, or if you raise your hand and if you'd like to speak, please feel free to. Now for the votes. Members, please vote in the, oh, go ahead.
Yvonne here, the slide is not on the screen.
Yeah, we'll need to.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, for clarifying that. Tech supports, we need your support.
To back up, I think if there's a slide on the amendment, maybe there might not have been a slide for that one. It's okay. Nice to see everyone now. There's no slide though.
It is good to see everyone. I'm noticing how many grays I have. Now it's up close. So
my apologies. It seems like we don't have a slide in this deck for this one.
No problem. Can we put the poll on the screen? Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben and Matthew. And thank you, Yvonne, for clarifying. So we're just going to wait a moment, folks, to ensure that the motion was either carried or defeated. Wonderful. The motion was carried. Thank you so much, Ben. Thank you so much, Matthew. This brings us to resolutions. Last year, a resolution entitled Implementing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the UNDRIP, was passed. I'd like to ask Mike Toy to report on the follow-up to that. I'm going to hand it off to you, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the resolution that was passed last year called on the CCEDNet Board of Directors to communicate to the federal and provincial governments the urgency of enshrining UNDRIP principles into law. So on October 28th, letters signed by our board president and policy council chair were sent to the Prime Minister and all provincial premiers, except John Horgan in BC, who was copied on the message. Those letters were posted under CCEDNet News section of the website. And it's the term? It's not causality necessarily, but just over a month later, the federal government did table Bill C-15, which was the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. And as of yesterday, when I checked Legis.info, it was actually at third reading in the Senate. So we're close to having it passed into law. We did get some replies. The Prime Minister replied on December 11th, referring our inquiry to the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations. And the only premier we heard back from actually was Scott Moe in Saskatchewan, who said that he appreciated our letter and was working with Indigenous leaders on the issue. So beyond the letter, though, CCEDNet's policy priorities were updated last summer and calls for the acceleration of nation-to-nation dialogue with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and reconciliation that recognizes their rights under UNDRIP, including the right to free, prior, and informed consent to projects on traditional territories, was enshrined in our policy priorities. And so our policy communications, letters, pre-budget briefs, and other advocacy materials consistently emphasize this principle as a cross-cutting prerequisite to constructive action. Our statement of solidarity with Wet'suwet'en last year also reiterated the call for federal and provincial governments to implement and uphold UNDRIP, and we will continue to support our Indigenous members and partners and advocate for the respect of their rights.
Thank you so much, Mike, for your leadership. Are there any questions for Mike? If there are, please feel free to unmute or make your comments or question or query in the chat feature. Okay, wonderful. This year we did not receive any resolutions, so we can move directly to nomination results. So if we can move on to the next, perfect. So in terms of elections, we're going to report from the elections officer. I'm going to introduce Hazel Cochran. Hazel Cochran is the executive director of the Canadian Worker Cooperative Federation and our elections officer to present the results of the board elections this year.
Thank you so much, Victor. So the board appointed me to act as elections officer this year again to perform duties as per the bylaws and policies. And the terms of 4 directors were ending at this annual general meeting. The board approved a call for nominations, which was shared with the members with a deadline of April 21st. 4 candidacies were received for the 4 positions, and I verified their status as nominees and of their supporters. And they were acclaimed elected for a 3-year term, but that's to be ratified at this AGM. So the directors elected by acclamation are Aftab Khan, Katie Allen, Katie Damon, and Michael Norris. And I'd like to express congratulations and appreciation to all these members for their service on the CCEDNet board. They bring valuable experience and will make or are making a significant contribution to the governance of CCEDNet. So thank you. I'd like to move acceptance of this report, including ratifying the acclamations for these director candidates. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hazel. So it is customary to ratify the elections officer's reports. Hazel, are you willing to move the ratification?
Yes, I so move.
Thank you so much, Hazel. Can I get a seconder to ratify the elections officer's reports?
I can second that. It's Karina Rosales,
Thank you
Seed
so
Winnipeg.
much, Karina. Thank you so much, Karina. So now we'll proceed to the votes. Please vote on the poll provided on your screen. I'll wait a moment to ensure that the vote was carried or defeated. Wonderful. So the motion is carried. So now we're going to go over to appreciations. I'd also like to thank board members and staff for their contributions to CCEDNet and all members for the support and different types of involvement. But there are a few people in particular we'd like to recognize. And I want to make sure that I say folks' names correctly. So if I don't, I apologize in advance. Marianne Jerziniak, Ryan Gibson, Jean-Francois Perret, all completed their time on the board in the past year and have made a tremendous contribution to CCEDNet, and we really appreciate your remarkable leadership. Marianne served on our board since 2011, starting as the co-chair of the Emerging Leaders Committee and going on to be vice president of the board from 2018 to 2020, and chairing the Policy Council from 2017 to 2020. We wish her warm congratulations on her growing family. Ryan started out as a chair of CCEDNet's membership committee, joining the board in 2009, and subsequently served as board secretary, then as president from 2016 to 2018. 12 years on the board is an amazing contribution. We thank you so much, Ryan, for your leadership and diligence. Jean-Francois has been on the board since 2019, completing a term begun by Luc Morin until he left the Cooperation Council of Ontario. Jean-Francois did valuable work looking at board retention. We really appreciate your leadership, Jean-Francois. Thank you to each and every one of you for your times, your skills, your leadership that you have given to this incredible organization, CCEDNet. So we're going to move on to the next slide, announcements. So at this time, we'd like to open up the floor. If there's any announcements from the membership, you can post them in the chat box or raise your hand and unmute as your line to speak.
Victor, you're going to set a new record for CCEDNet AGM here in terms of time.
I would like to plug an event coming up. It's not a CCEDNet event, but it's an event in partnership with Circle Philanthropy and the Atkinson Foundation called All My Relations. And I really want folks to lean in on the work of Chris Archie and others. So I'll just plug that as an announcement. It's not CCEDNet related, but it's a shameless plug for some good work happening that came across my desk a few days ago. Is there anyone else that'd like to make announcements? And thank you, Mike. Definitely. We've been able to get through this seamlessly, which is awesome. And thank you to the tech support. So if there's no announcements right now, I'm going to
Sorry,
move...
Victor. Sorry, Yvon Poirier has his hand up.
Hey, go ahead, Yvon.
Yes, more or less at the international level, many important things are going on. One of them is that the International Labour Organization voted in March that the 2022 International Labour Conference would retain as a main thematic social and solidarity economy. This is really new for ILO, and this is very encouraging. And the Canadian delegation who was at the governing body of ILO supported this proposal, which staff have been working on in Geneva for quite a few years. So that's for all the work we've been doing internationally, because I'm more or less an international representative of CCEDNet in these instances in the international network. So this is very stimulating and encouraging, and let's hope that we can continue to move on this. At the same time, there's still a lot of work going on to have the United Nations adopt a resolution on SSE. And the Secretary General of the UN, Guterres, in February, produced a document where he said that social and solidarity economy were a strategy for moving out of post-COVID situation. So there is a lot of work going on with many people in different countries. So hoping that we can get the Canadian government also to support this stronger in the future. But I wanted to share these very positive news.
Thank you, as always, Yvonne, for providing that international social equity lens and just keeping us apprised and aware of the work and efforts happening internationally. We really appreciate your leadership and eldership, sir. Are there any other announcements? So we're going to move on to the next slide, which is the adjournments. So just before we end the formal portion of the meeting, you should be receiving a short evaluation of the AGM via email. We'd be grateful if you take a minute to give us your feedback on your experience and what we can do to improve things next time. Can I have someone move for the adjournment of the 2021 Annual General Meeting of CCEDNet?
Like Roz Lockyear's raised her hand there.
Thank you so much, Roz. And can we have a seconder, please?
No one wants to leave. That's
I can second.
Off top.
Incredible. So I wanted to make a note that we're officially ending at 1:42 p.m. Eastern Standard. Now we'll move directly into the presentation of the Stronger Together Awards, and I'll turn this over to Mike Toy, our Executive Director.
So I'm going to consult with the people who are really running the show here. And I think actually we had planned for your chairing not to be as efficient, Mr. President, and there may be other people joining us in 18 minutes. So is the plan then for us to take a break and to restart in 18 minutes for the Stronger Together Awards? I see a couple of head nods. Are people okay with that? If we take a break? Okay. So thank you all. It is seeing, without the slides, seeing a few faces at least, it makes me miss not getting together. National conferences has been too long. But thank you all for being here. And congratulations, Mr. President, on a very efficient first AGM that you've chaired. You're going to have to keep doing that, I think.
As long as you guys are having me, thank you so much for the opportunity to share and contribute. And yeah, I definitely like this platform better than the Adobe. Yeah.
Right. So we'll take a short break then, everyone, and see you in 17 minutes. It's going to be very exciting, these awards. Thank you.
Well done, well done.